In the space of about 72 hours, a company worth $32 billion ceased to exist. Not slowly, not over months of decline. In 3 days.
Cryptocurrencies had already been having a bad year. Exactly a year ago, the value of Bitcoin hit its all-time high. Since then, it has lost more than 3/4 of its value.
One of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges on Earth, a company that had splashed its name across a sports arena, run adverts during the Super Bowl, and been backed by some of the smartest investors in the world, gone. And with it, around $8 billion of ordinary people's money simply was not there anymore. Not stolen in a dramatic heist, not lost in a market crash. It had quietly vanished, long before anyone noticed, into a black hole that the man at the top had spent years pretending did not exist.
FTX really shook the world, and as it fell into bankruptcy, it's meant that customers who had been trading on the exchange had been unable to access their accounts or their money apart.
The people who ran it were celebrated as geniuses. The founder was on magazine covers, shaking hands with prime ministers and movie stars, talked about as one of the most important young figures in finance. He preached about ethics, about giving his fortune away, about doing good. And the whole time, the money customers thought was sitting safely in their accounts was being used somewhere else entirely. They just did not know it yet. So how does a $32 billion empire evaporate in a single weekend? And where exactly did all that money go? Stay with me, because the answer is simpler and far more brazen than most people realize.
And so some of them would wire money to Alameda and then ask to be credited on their FTX account.
This is FTX. Here is the thing you have to understand first. This is not a story about cryptocurrency being complicated or risky, although it is both. Strip away the jargon and the technology, and what happened at FTX is one of the oldest frauds in the book, just dressed up in something new and shiny enough that almost nobody looked underneath. To see how, we have to go back to the beginning, and to two companies that should never have been allowed to get so close. The founder's name was Sam Bankman-Fried. In 2017, he co-founded a cryptocurrency trading firm called Alameda Research. The idea was clever and at first perfectly legitimate. Buy a cryptocurrency cheaply in one place, sell it for slightly more somewhere else, and pocket the difference. A trading firm, hunting for small gaps in the market. But trading firms need money to trade with. And so, 2 years later, Bankman-Fried had a second idea. One that would make him a billionaire and then destroy him. He would build his own cryptocurrency exchange. A platform where ordinary people could come to buy and sell crypto.
For a while, and they're obviously extremely impressive people. And also really excited to work with them on the charity side.
He called it FTX. And on the surface, it was a roaring success. FTX grew at staggering speed. Millions of users signed up. Big-name investors poured in money, valuing the company at $32 billion at its peak. Bankman-Fried became, on paper, one of the richest people under 30 in the world, with a personal fortune estimated at $16 billion. He bought the naming rights to a major sports arena, his company's logo stamped across the home of a professional basketball team. He ran a commercial during the Super Bowl, the most expensive advertising real estate on the planet. A-list actors, comedians, and sporting legends lent their faces to the brand, telling ordinary people that this was the safe, smart, trustworthy place to put their money. Politicians took his calls. He testified before lawmakers as a respected voice on how crypto should be regulated. The fox, it turned out, advising the henhouse on security. In just 3 years, a man barely 30 years old had gone from running a small trading firm to being treated as financial royalty. But underneath the success was a problem hiding in plain sight, and it was the relationship between his two companies. Because Bankman-Fried did not just own FTX, the exchange where the public kept their money.
Alameda did have a big position open on FTX. That position, I think, was...
He also still owned the vast majority of Alameda, the private trading firm gambling in the markets. One company held the public savings, the other made risky bets, and the same man controlled both. In the world of finance, this is exactly the kind of conflicts that rules exist to prevent. An exchange is supposed to be like a bank vault. It holds your money, and it keeps it separate, untouchable, yours. What it must never do is take the money sitting in that vault and hand it to a sister company down the hall to gamble with. And yet, that is precisely what happened. But to understand how they got away with it for so long, you have to understand how good the story looked from the outside, because that was the real magic trick. Bankman-Fried did not present himself as a flashy crypto bro chasing Lamborghinis. He did the opposite. He wore cargo shorts and a crumpled t-shirt. He talked about sleeping on a beanbag at the office. He spoke earnestly about a philosophy of giving away almost everything he earned to good causes. He cultivated an image of a brilliant, slightly chaotic, fundamentally good young man who just happened to be very, very good at making money. Money he intended to use to save the world. He attached himself to a movement built around the idea of earning as much money as possible, specifically in order to give it away to the causes that would do the most good in the world. It was a noble-sounding mission, and he wore it like armor. How could a man whose entire stated purpose was to give his billions away be stealing? The philosophy did not just make him look good, it made suspicion feel almost rude. It was an image that disarmed everyone. Investors handed over hundreds of millions with remarkably little scrutiny. Regulators saw a cooperative, well-meaning founder. The media wrote glowing profiles. Who, after all, would suspect the rumpled idealist who said he did not even care about being rich? And this is where the story stops being about a clever business and starts being about a lie. Because behind the scenes, the wall between FTX and Alameda was not just thin. In crucial ways, it did not exist at all. Alameda, the trading firm, was quietly being allowed to borrow from FTX, and what it was borrowing was not the company's own money. It was customer deposits.
Now let's bring you up to speed on the collapsed crypto exchange FTX, because there could be some good news for the millions of people.
The savings of ordinary people who had been promised their funds were safe and sitting in their accounts were, in reality, being routed to Alameda to fund its trades. How was it even technically possible to move customer money out without anyone raising the alarm? Part of the answer, it later emerged, was hidden in the software itself. FTX's systems had been quietly built with a kind of secret exemption for Alameda, a special arrangement in the code that let the trading firm pull funds and run a balance that no ordinary customer ever could, without tripping the alarms that should have stopped it. The safeguards that were supposed to protect customer money had, in effect, been switched off for the one company that should never have had access to it. The fraud was not just a decision, it had been engineered. And there was a special piece of machinery that made this possible. FTX had created its own cryptocurrency token called FTT. Think of it like a loyalty point the company invented out of thin air, which gave traders discounts. The company itself held an enormous quantity of these tokens, and so did Alameda. And here is the dangerous part. A huge chunk of Alameda's supposed wealth, the assets it claimed to be worth billions, was made up of this FTT token, a currency FTX had created itself. Sit with how circular that is for a moment. Alameda was borrowing real customer money, and the collateral backing those loans was, to a large extent, a token its own sister company had conjured into existence. As long as everyone believed the token was valuable, the illusion held. The numbers on the balance sheet looked enormous. The empire looked unshakable. But it was built on a currency that was only worth something as long as nobody asked too hard what it was actually worth. And in late 2022, someone did. Hold that token in your mind, because everything is about to turn on it. In early November 2022, a news article appeared based on a leaked document, a look at Alameda's books, and what it revealed was alarming. It showed that Alameda, this supposedly mighty trading firm, was sitting on a mountain of FTX's own FTT token. Its entire financial health appeared to be propped up by a coin invented by the company next door. To the people who understood what they were looking at, it raised a terrifying question. What if Alameda was not actually rich at all? What if it was only rich on paper, in a currency that could collapse the moment confidence wavered? Then came the spark that lit the fire. The head of a rival exchange, the largest in the world, announced publicly that his company would sell off its entire holding of FTT tokens. It was a simple announcement, but its effect was devastating. If a major player was dumping FTT, the price would fall. And if the price of FTT fell, then Alameda's collateral, the thing backing all those loans of customer money, would crumble. Panic spread. FTX customers, suddenly nervous, rushed to withdraw their money all at once. And this is the moment the whole illusion shattered.
It's an $8 billion hole in FTX's balance sheet. That is bigger than the size of Robinhood's entire market value.
Because when hundreds of thousands of people asked for their deposits back at the same time, FTX could not return them. The money was not there. It had been lent to Alameda. It had been gambled, and much of it lost. The vault that customers believed held their savings was, in truth, largely empty. This is what is called a bank run, and it is the oldest nightmare in finance. And FTX failed it completely. Within days, the exchange froze withdrawals. Customers watched, helpless, as the button to take out their own money simply stopped working. Their life savings, their crypto holdings, everything, locked inside a company that no longer had the funds to give it back. For a brief moment, it looked like there might be a rescue. The very rival whose announcement had helped trigger the panic stepped forward and signaled it might buy FTX outright, swooping in to save it and protect the wider market. For a day, the crypto world held its breath. Then, after getting a look at FTX's actual books, the rival walked away. Whatever they saw inside was bad enough that buying the company, even cheaply, even as a favor to the whole industry, was not worth it. That was the moment everyone understood the hole was not a temporary cash flow problem. It was a crater. On the 11th of November 2022, FTX, Alameda, and more than 100 related companies filed for bankruptcy. Bankman-Fried resigned. A new chief executive was brought in to sort through the wreckage.
Some of those accounts, could be by multiple users. So we're in the process of really analyzing.
A man who had overseen some of the largest corporate collapses in history. He took one look at the books and said, in writing, that in his decades of experience, he had never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. There were barely any proper records. Company money and personal spending blurred together. It was, by his account, chaos, masquerading as a multi-billion-dollar business. And now we arrive at the number. The gap between what FTX owed its customers and what it could actually pay came to around $8 billion. Say it slowly. That's 10 zeros. And someone signed off on every single one. $8 billion of other people's money gone. To put that in human terms, that is not the wealth of a few hedge funds who can absorb a loss. Spread across the more than 1 million people who had accounts on the platform, it was the savings of ordinary individuals all over the world. And for a long time after the collapse, most of them had no idea whether they would ever see a single cent of it again. So where did it actually go? This is the part that turns a financial collapse into a crime. Some of it had been lost in Alameda's bad trades, swallowed by the markets, but a great deal of it had been spent on luxury property in the Bahamas where the company was based, on enormous marketing deals and that sports arena naming rights, on donations to politicians, on venture investments scattered across hundreds of companies. The money customers believed was sitting safely in their accounts had been treated, in the words of the court that later judged it, as the founder's personal piggy bank. But the people who lost their money were not celebrities or politicians. They were ordinary investors, teachers, retirees, young people who had put their savings into what they believed was a safe, regulated, world-class exchange, because everyone told them it was. They were the ones left staring at a frozen screen, realizing the money was never coming back. And so, the final act moved from the markets to a courtroom. Bankman-Fried was arrested and charged with one of the largest financial frauds in American history. At his trial, several of his closest colleagues, the people who had run Alameda and FTX alongside him, pleaded guilty and testified against him. They told the court that he had directed the use of customer money to cover Alameda's losses. His defense was that he had made mistakes, not committed crimes, that he genuinely believed the money would be there in the end. The jury did not believe him. He was convicted on all counts.
I left my job and ultimately got involved in the burgeoning cryptocurrency ecosystem.
The judge, in sentencing, said something that cut to the heart of it, that Bankman-Fried knew his actions were wrong and had simply made a bad bet about the likelihood of getting caught. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. And this is where the story stops being about one young man in cargo shorts and becomes about everyone who believed him. Because the most uncomfortable truth of FTX is not that the rules were broken. It is how easily and how willingly so many smart people chose not to look. Investors who manage billions handed over their money without demanding to see how it was kept. Regulators were charmed. Celebrities lent their faces. Millions of customers trusted that someone, somewhere, had checked. That an exchange this big, this famous, this praised, must surely be safe. Nobody had checked. The image of the brilliant, ethical genius was so convincing that almost no one thought to ask the simplest question of all. If I want my money back tomorrow, is it actually there? For $8 billion worth of people, the answer came too late. The money had never really been sitting in the vault. It had vanished long before, into trades and mansions and marketing, and the gap between a beautiful story and the truth. FTX did not collapse because crypto is complicated. It collapsed because an old, simple fraud was wrapped in something new enough that the world forgot to ask the oldest question there is. No sides, no politics, just the receipts. Count the zeros.